Σας ευχαριστώ που είστε εδώ μαζί μας σήμερα και χαίρομαι που σας βλέπω ειλικρινά. Έχουμε βάλει μια εμβόλυμη, ας το πούμε έτσι, συνέντευξη, ανταλλαγή απόψεων μεταξύ σημενόντων προσωπικότητων της ευρωπαϊκής βιομηχανίας. Έχουμε μαζί μας σήμερα τον Πρόεδρο των Γερμανικών Βιομηχανιών, τον κύριο Grillo. Έχουμε τον Αντιπρόεδρο των Ισπανικών Βιομηχανιών, τον κύριο Gonzalez. Και έχουμε και τον Γενικό Διευθυντή της Business Europe, που είναι ο ΣΕΒ των ΣΕΒ, ας πούμε, της Ευρώπης, τον κύριο Beyrer. Ο κύριος Παχελάς, που κάθεται στην άκρη δεξιά, θα συντονίσει μια κουβέντα. Και τέλος, εγώ που θα καθίσω στην τελευταία θέση, θα μετέχω τη συζήτηση ως εκπρόσωπος των ελληνικών βιομηχανιών και του ΣΕΒ. Αυτή η παρεμβολή είναι πριν από την έναρξη της Γενικής μας Συνέλευσης, οπότε είναι ανοιχτή και στα μέσα μαζικής ενημέρωσης. Θα κρατήσει περίπου μια ώρα και αφού αποχαιρετήσουμε τους καλεσμένους μας, τους ξένους, στη συνέχεια θα αρχίσουμε την Γενική Συνέλευση. Και πάλι καλημέρα, καλή συζήτηση και σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity for me to moderate this, well, I wouldn't call it a debate, but at least, you know, this discussion. My understanding was that there was going to be a government official on the panel. It's too bad nobody from the government is here. I think it's good to listen to the private sector and what the private sector thinks, and vice versa. But anyway, it's my pleasure to moderate this. Let me tell you a bit about the format. We're going to have introductory remarks by each one of our panelists for about 5 minutes or so. Hopefully nobody will follow the Fidel Castro format and make it longer. And afterwards we'll have a Q&A among ourselves, and then we'll take some questions from you. Let me start with Mr. Grillo.
Yes, thank you very much, dear President Fessers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Fessers, for the invitation to the General Assembly of SEV. It's a pleasure for me to discuss here, to come to Greece, to come to Athens, and to discuss here with you the challenges that we face in Europe. As we are discussing the prospect of growth, that's the topic, prospect of growth and competitiveness in Europe, I would like to make a few points about our German experience from the crisis 15 years ago to growth today. Though we will not grow as fast as Spain or Ireland this year, 2015 will probably be a good year for our economy with GDP growth of about 2%. We can count on a robust labor market with strong job growth and low unemployment. Exports are expected to grow by close to 5%. Cheap oil, the monetary policy of the ECB and the exchange rate play, of course, a large role in this story, to be honest. So the question I was asked to answer by my Greek colleagues is what makes the German economy somewhat successful? First of all, let me say that there is no recipe for success we would like to export to other European countries. My conviction is that every country should build on its own strengths. And Germany's underlying potential growth is clearly not very high in international comparison and only slightly above 1%. However, the German economy has some main features which are drivers for competitiveness and success. Germany has a strong industrial base. The industry's share of value added has remained quite stable over 15 years and accounts for about 22% right now. This is much higher than the European average, which has continuously decreased in the last years and is about 15% right now. German companies took up business opportunities in many developing and emerging countries. Besides, German industrial firms are closely intervened with one another, producing inputs and final goods with sophisticated services attached to them. Next, 98% of all industrial firms in Germany are small and medium-sized companies. I think that's similar to Greece. You have 98-99% of small companies. They form the so-called German Mittelstand. Many of these small and medium-sized companies are hidden champions, around 1,500. They are market leaders in their segment. Our industrial competitiveness depends on highly qualified employees, of course. The German compulsory system of apprenticeships and vocational training has delivered good results. It has also contributed to a comparatively low youth unemployment rate of currently 7.2%. It is based on a long tradition of joint responsibility of employers, unions, and the state. It's also, for me, it's one key factor. And last but not least, Germany has implemented 10 years ago a bunch of structural reforms to liberalize product and labor market rules under the leadership of Chancellor Schröder, a social democrat. Dismissal protection was eased a bit, transfer payments to certain groups of unemployed were reduced, and the job placement process was improved. Besides, flexible working time counts were established. Trade unions agreed to wage increases aligned with productivity. Developments at the company level, as Germany's cost base at the time created difficulties. By the time of the financial crisis, Germany could have expanded again on pure domestic grounds. This is a history, and another 5 difficult years came about. However, since 2012, German wages are substantially growing again, thereby closing the divergence in unit labor costs with southern European countries a bit. This leads me to another characteristic of the German economy: strong social partnerships. Trade unions and companies work together very well. Wage policy is based on productivity and trying to protect employment. Social partnership, however, extends beyond wage policies. As you know, there are co-determined company boards, much joint work in social systems and in education, and a broadly similar perspective on fostering economic activity. Today, the fact is often neglected that it took 5 quite painful years to end high unemployment and to return to growth in Germany. Generally speaking, companies need good framework conditions for production and investment, a stable political environment, and confidence. Confidence, for me, is the most important thing. Confidence is the measures the government will take in the future. We know that in the last years, Greece has undertaken many measures to overcome the crisis. Greece has undertaken a large number of painful, very painful and necessary reforms in the public sector, in the regulation of services, in labor markets and in the tax systems. Greece also addressed the fiscal situation. The population has been suffering from reduced public services, high unemployment and high levels of social vulnerability. The only way forward is by a strong and consistent pursuit of reforms towards making the market economy and the public sector work better. And to improve living standards and create new employment, Greece has to find a way back to growth. This will be possible if Greece continues with meaningful reforms of goods and services, markets, fiscal adjustment aided by improved tax implementation and stronger institutions. You know these needs. It is also great importance to conclude the talks with Greece European partners on the conditions for disbursing additional support. If the Greek government re-establishes confidence in a stable political environment and a stable relationship to its European partners, this will clear the way for new investment and bilateral efforts to help Greece develop new fields of economic activities. We would be happy to do so. I would be happy. We feel as friends for Greece, so good luck and thank you for your attention.
Good morning. First of all, thank you to CEOE to have the opportunity to be here, to be in Greece, to be in Athens, and addressing to you. My task in this panel is try to explain you what we did in Spain to confront the crisis we are now sorting out. This is true. Not to tell you what you must do, because I think every country, and one of the big mistakes of the EMF is to implement the same kind of process in any country without taking in consideration the time of the circumstances. Then I think every country, it must find their own way to solve these problems. We were in 2010, 2011 in a very bad situation, very close to the European rescue. We didn't like, this was true. We needed to start a big structural reforms program. We had a lot of weakness. First of all, we needed to start a reform of the financial system, which especially the part which is called savings bank, which were regional savings banks like the Sparkasse in Germany, had a lot of problems, a lot of balance problems, especially because they invest a lot of money just supporting the real estate bubble. I can tell you, in the precedent years, we made some exaggeration. Some of these years we built more houses than the rest of Europe together. And of course, there was an unrealistic, and the question was that to buy a house was not a normal act in the life of any family, was an investment instrument. That started the bubble. Responsibility of the people asking for money which they cannot return, but also of the banks who gives the loans to them, and the banks in other countries who gives loans to the banks to do that. It was a chain of irresponsibilities. But normally, we only talk always about the responsibility of the people taking the loan. But we don't forget the banks who lend the money to other banks to do these things. They have also some kind of responsibility. But anyway, the fact was there. There was a credit crunch, especially for the small and medium companies who produce, many of them, they must close because they have not enough money, not for investment, just money for the current life. Then the Spanish government in this moment launched a reform program with the support of the European Union, including the 100 billion loan facility from the European Union, but happily we need to use only 41 million of these 100 because the rest can be managed with our own funds. The second important thing, what is happening now with this, after this reform, last 3 months, the credit to the small and medium companies is growing at the rate of 14%. And that's just you feel in the streets, which everything is better. Also at the same time, in 2012, government put in operation a big labor reform. We had a very restrictive, non-flexible labor regulations, which practically, if you have a reduction in your sales of 30%, the only way you have to sort out is to lay off 30% of your workers, which is always a big social problem, but also you lost the people who know how to do the things. And when the things is going better, you have not these people. Then the law was an important step forward in the labor legislation and the modernization, would practically introduce flexibility similar to our neighboring countries. Something similar, not exact, that you did in Germany 10 years before. And therefore, also to improve the efficiency and the flexibility, allowing us, to the companies, to consider alternative manners of redundancy. A wake-up calling regarding the shortcomings on collective agreement which is essential for management and for workers. This is the first point in the labor relationship, but I think the second point was made by the CEOE, the Spanish Business Association, was an agreement with the unions valid for 2012, 2013, 2014, accepting a very low increase in salaries, with a figure was until 0.6% increase salary, which the result was the increase in salary were around 0.5, and it was very important because that allowed us to regain the competitivity lost in the previous years, was in reality a kind of internal devaluation, like if you devalue your currency. This agreement was finished at the end of 2014, but just the last week we agreed for another similar agreement with a little bit more increases in salary for 15, 16, and 17. And in this point, I want to underline and to put in value the responsible attitude of the unions who cooperate with us in a kind of social dialogue, making the things not easy, because this kind of agreements we suppose big efforts for the salaries of the people never are easy, but the attitude of the unions were very, very, very positive. At the same time, government put in operation also allow supporting entrepreneurs and their internationalization. The result of that is now we go from 20% around 20% of our GDP in export now to the 32%, which is the highest number after Germany in the whole European Union. A lot of other reforms, some of them in operation, some others still starting, and some others which in reality needs to be done. One of the reforms we need to be done is the reform of the public administration. Then almost in Spain, as far as I remember, every election, all parties, they say we go to reform the administration in order to be less bureaucratic. When the 4 years of government finalized, again they go to reform the public administration organization, which never arrives in the right time. We think now maybe that's arrives. Results of that is also for allow budgetary stability and financial sustainability that allows us by the moment to fulfill the commitments with the European Union about the deficit, the fiscal deficit. Reduction in the expenditure of ministries is through more on investment, more reduction in investments than in current spending. Another important thing was the reform in the pension system. Before it was automatically related with the inflation rate. Some points up the inflation rate, there was a change. Then now the increases or not increase in the pension system is depending of a yearly update factor which links pensions to the financial situation of the pension system, which is public in Spain, the number of pensioners and the average pension, and second, to the life expectancy. As a consequence of this structural reform process, the Spanish economy model is transforming and becoming more balanced and sound. As a result, the Spanish economy has accumulated 7 consecutive quarters of quarterly increases in growth and becoming gradually stronger. The productivity and cost gap built up during the initial years of the economy and monetary union is now compensating. An important thing for us is last year, if we took the example of the last year, We needed historically GDPs of around 2 to 2.5% in order to can create jobs. And the last year we create jobs just with 1.4% GDP. It's just the first time I see that in my life. Banks has a quite situation. Financial problems in the bank is solved. Now the credit is easier for companies or for families. We expect for this year a growth. You know, the economists, this is one of the special aim for the economists is to discuss about the previsions of the GDP, but there are a kind of consensus. Our GDP this year will be around between 2.5–3%, probably near to the 3%, more than the 2.5. This year too, the public deficit rate will be decreasing in the framework of the foundation objective. About the unemployment rate, which is, I think, the biggest weakness in our economy, but we expect to create in 2015, between 2014 and 2015, around 1 million jobs. Not the jobs we like to create, but it's a very important step forward. And as in reality, and from our point of view, the Spanish reform process has been ambitious and well-oriented, always. We say from the business organization, we must keep on the track of the structural reforms because the only way we obtain results. I am much honored to join this CEOE General Assembly to bring you a message of hope and solidarity from the Spanish business community and to tell you reforms are essential in order to reach economical solutions, to become more competitive, not only among the member states of the European Union, but in the framework of the worldwide economy where all of us we are working. But also we need, I think, European Union must do something. We need, this is a moment of difficulties, but in moment of difficulties from our point of view, we need more Europe, not less Europe. More integrated economy and monetary union, and make further progress in the fiscal union and the banking union. We think we need to keep in the reform efforts. There's no room for complacency. Economy reforms is the only way to achieve long-term growth. And to conclude this brief word, let me stress the message of support from the Spanish business community to Hellenic Business Association, our friends in Greece. You can always count on us to improve competitiveness, economic growth and job creation. In the end, the only way to strengthen the standard of living of citizens and to keep the European social model. Thank you very much.
Mr. Beyrer, and if I can ask you to keep the time limit to about 5–6 minutes, so we have more time for discussion.
Good. Thank you, Chairman. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank you for inviting me to this venue. Not only it's always a pleasure to come into Greece, but also to express the deep solidarity the European business community feels for the Hellenic business community. We had a debate in our Council of Presidents recently in Riga. Theodore was there, and the debate is not about should we be solidary, and the debate is how can we support and what is necessary. So please be assured of this. You know, Business Europe is the European umbrella organization of the European business associations. We work together very closely. Theodore, Akis, Irini, of course, and not to forget my friend Dimitris Daskaropoulos. And I can assure you they are a strong voice of Greek business in our debates. And I would say if your government is doing 10% of the job they will be doing, I think we'll have a deal in 2 weeks, and this is what we all hope for. Well, for me, yesterday I had the chance to walk a little bit in Athens, and I passed by your academia, and I thought, wow, this looks like our parliament. Austria, I'm an Austrian national. So then I had a look and Googled it, and it's the same architect. It's Theophil Hansen. So it was really interesting to see. I didn't know, so I have to admit. So there is many things we have in common. But where do we stand on the business, on the economy? Well, you've seen that the European economy is recently doing better. I mean, I must say I rewrote the tone of the speech a little bit recently because, of course, this is due to specific factors. We have the weak euro, we have the low oil price, we have the quantitative easing of the European Central Bank. And of course, this is a window of opportunity which will not be there forever. But what we can see is that now it starts to work, and specifically it starts to work in the countries which have been doing reforms. And we have seen that recently, especially in the first quarter, we have better figures now. So there's something to build upon on European level, but there is a number of things we will still have to do, because as I say, I mean, this window of opportunity will close, and we have to use it to do the right things. So number one, in Europe, we have to attract more investment. And of course, the Juncker plan, this 300 and something billion euros, can help, but this can only help to kickstart. I mean, this will not improve the investment climate. The investment climate, we will have to improve it step by step by removing the obstacles, by creating the security, the certainty, by removing bureaucratic obstacles, by reducing the tax burden. I mean, we have the highest tax burden in Europe compared to our global competitors. And, I mean, to just point out one more thing out of a very long list, of course, reducing our energy costs. I mean, this is one of the major competitive disadvantages we are having compared to the world. It averages 2.5 times what our friends in the US would pay, but when you go down to specific investments, I mean, this goes up to 5 times the price. Well, of course, access to finance remains a concern. This is where we think the capital union is a very right thing, but of course now we need to translate it into action, meaning to have liquidity for small and medium-sized enterprises, to get the right balance in the so-called prudential rules. I mean, of course, it was necessary to draw the right conclusions from the financial crisis, but meanwhile you have the impression that there is a kind of competition to ask for the highest capital requirements, which of course leads to more problems in liquidity in the markets. It is important to come to complementary sources. We are much too much based on banking. I mean, this is a simple truth, but we talk about this since a while. We have to overcome it. We need more venture capital. We need more equity. And of course, it's also in restoring confidence in securitization. Securitized asset-backed securities and so on have been banned after the subprime crisis. I mean, now, of course, we need to make a step back into a safer system in this respect. Needless to say that we need to improve access to foreign markets. 90% of the growth will happen outside Europe this year. So we need to have access to these markets. And there's good news that yesterday at least the filibuster on the Hill in Senate for the fast track procedure for the US negotiators to make a step closer to TTIP has been overcome. And of course it's about digitalization, something we discuss a lot. I mean, I had the chance to discuss this, funnily enough, with your Minister of Finance 2 weeks ago. We had a debate in Brussels where everybody was expecting a debate on Greece, but he didn't want to, so we had a debate on digital economy, which is important. But of course it was a little bit talking and metaphors. But it is one of the most important chapters we have, because, I mean, first, we have to seize the opportunities. Second, we need to make sure that what we produce is adaptable to our business model, which is very much driven by production. And third, we have to finally create this market also in digital. I mean, we are sometimes blaming Google, and of course we have to make sure that they fully apply our law, including competition law, but at the same time we cannot blame them for having a very strong home market, which we don't, and we are tying in our possible new Googles in 28 sub-markets, and this is something we need to overcome. Then it's of course about having a strong industrial base. I mean, you can see that those countries which did best in the crisis and after the crisis is those having maintained a sufficiently strong and competitive industrial base. and I don't have to name the countries, and there's a change in thinking. I mean, now we are very much focused on getting Europe back strong again in industry, in manufacturing. 5 years ago, with such a strategy, our British colleagues, to name just one example, I mean, they would have told me, you're nuts, this is not the way. Meanwhile, I think they understood it's not only about financial services. But the most important thing, and I think this has been stressed in the speeches by President Grillo and my friend Jose Vicente, it's about doing the right reforms. And of course, reforms is a word nobody likes. But the truth is, I mean, the reforms only work if you do them. We are doing something once a year which is called the European Reform Barometer, where we assess the so-called country-specific recommendations and see, is it the right ones? And the answer of our members is up to 90% it is the right ones. But the question is, are they implemented? And there the answer is only 22% of them are implemented. If you look at the latest growth figures, you can see that those who have gone through the reforms in the last 2 years are showing the most significant growth. Spain is going to grow by around 3%, if I'm not mistaken. Ireland is back to Celtic Tiger, and also Portugal is performing very well, but you know all this. Let me bring you an example from my home country, which is Austria. I used to serve as the chief economic advisor of the Austrian Prime Minister in a time where we did a lot of reforms. We cut the corporate tax rate from 34% to 25%. We reorganized the R&D support scheme. We made a pension reform, a budget reform. Not easy, but after some years, I mean, there was German newspapers writing, Austria the better Germany, or how do the Austrians do this? So this was the good years. The truth is, of course, Austria is still doing well, but now after 5, 6, 7 years of not doing much, you can also see it in the figures, because the bottom line is not lying. If you look at the latest growth expectations, well, of course, Austria is still doing fine as far as labor market is concerned. I mean, we are no longer the lowest in unemployment, but you can see that in the growth figures, we are 5th or 6th lowest in the last growth expectations. And once again, reforms only do work if you do them and if you continue to do them. So let me come to an end, not talking too much in detail what Greece needs to do, because I think this is something we can do in a second round, and many people tend to tell Greece what Greece needs to do. I think you know perfectly what you need to do. I had a look at your 82 proposals, which is very good, very substantive, and very deep in substance. Let me lose a word about the game theory, because this is something, this is a theory I like a lot for 2 reasons. I mean, number one, it has been developed by Austrian economists in United States universities, but second, this has always been the basement of our social partnership in my home country. But I would say a different understanding than some might have of a game theory, because the understanding is, let's work together in order to make a bigger cake, in order that everybody has a larger share of the cake. And I think this is also the understanding of the German social partnership. It has nothing to do with blackmailing the others, and I think this is not necessary, because again, I think there's a deep and really structured support by the European business community for Greece, for the Greek business community. The only thing we would need is to get a decent piece of paper with a number of things on it, and the trust that this will happen, and I think then we will be able to make a very successful step forward. Thanks for your attention, and looking forward to it.
We never thought that game theory was to be tested in real circumstances, you know.
Yeah, good morning to everybody. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us here. And this is a very actual presentation of your support given to the Greek business community. And I hope the same will happen at the government level. By talking about game theory, I understand how good was the debate with the Minister of Finance in Brussels, because he is also a fan of game theory. Nevertheless, let me tell you in which country you are talking, because 92% of our GDP comes from consumption and only 8% comes from manufacturing and from production. Also, industry, while in Germany is 22%, the manufacturing sector here in Greece is a little below 10%. So we need a lot of, we have a lot of way to go until we find the European average, which is expected to be 20% by 2020, which is far away from Greece, or at least 15%, which is today here. Our federation is basically a manufacturing federation and eventually has become major enterprises and well-structured enterprises. It is true that Greece has achieved over the past years, 5 years, an unprecedented 16 points adjustment balance of the budget. So it was tough. We lost 25% of GDP and we have currently more than 1 million unemployed people. So it came with a cost. To give you an idea, it was double than Ireland and Portugal and almost 3 times than what happens in Cyprus in fiscal adjustment. Last year, by the end of last year, we've seen some signs of growth. However, this growth is always based on demand, that's consumption is 92%, and less on investment or export driven. So this success of the program was not very visible. And it is true that the current government has criticized this program because it had a devastating result, but I'm afraid it's going again to demand-oriented policies. So this will accelerate again the discrepancies of the Greek economy. And what we understand, and what most of the people understand, that this government has been elected to become an angel of change, but within Euro and within Eurozone. So structural reforms, as you mentioned before, are important for our economy to grow, and also fiscal adjustments should be moderate in order to keep the economy in a good shape. There is a great attention given to the geopolitical dimensions of Greece. It is true that Greece has an important role to play because it is between East and West a very important country for several reasons, like, for example, defense or a port and a logistics center can happen. So what we understand the new government needs is time and space to adjust to reality by declaring some small symbolic victories back home, but is imminent, and we discuss later on, and this is the key message we read in the papers and we watch in the media, that an agreement has to be made with our European partners as soon as possible, because time is going, time is disappearing, and money has finished. So where does the business community stand in this complex situation? We believe that the Greek economy needs to become competitive by international standards within the Eurozone. We cannot do it out of the Eurozone due to specific structural problems of our economy and lack of a strong production base. So the European project is in danger if words and suspicion take the lead instead of solidarity and actions. We need to avoid an accident. This is why we, the European business community, are actively asking from the European and domestic political leaders to reach a compromise and that will solidify the prospects of the European project on all possible levels, political, economic, and social. Thank you.
Let me ask you, I mean, the first question is something that's in everybody's mind, I think. you're all very close to the political establishments at your own homelands. What is, if you give us a candid assessment of what the mood is towards Greece right now, and especially the question, I guess, is, assuming we go through the second package in this current negotiation, is there enough political appetite for a third package which looks inevitable for Greece? Mr. Grillo?
First, I would say we all want to keep Greece in Europe, in the European Association and in the Euro. A stronger Greece makes a stronger Europe. Yeah, and that's very, very easy. So everybody would like to keep the country in our family and in our currency. So, but of course, there are some reforms, some measurements needed. And it's not my role and it's not my job, and I would never do it to give advice to Greece and to say what to do. But we have a lot of examples here with Spain, with Portugal, that it pays out somebody. And that's the way of thinking also from the German politician, I'm sure. And it wouldn't make sense, of course, to let's say, to prolong the second part without going to the third. Yeah? So if from the Greece politics, if there are clear signs which lead to trust, clear signs that they undergo structural reforms, they were on a very good way during the last year. So if we see the politics which are negotiating, see clear signs, they would say yes, and there would be help. You know, it's 27 states, not only Germany, of course, 27 who have to agree in Europe, but I'm optimistic. If there are signs that Greece is going in the right direction, everybody would like to help.
And you think the Chancellor will take the lead in the political capital to spend?
Pardon?
You think the Chancellor will spend the political capital and will have the courage to lead it?
I'm quite sure, yeah.
And Mr. Schäuble?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's no, you know, we don't want rumors. We don't want Greece out of the game. Yeah, it's not a game, but you know what I mean. So, but it's not only Mr. Schäuble, it's not only Ms. Merkel. It's 27 states, of course, and it's Greece, which have to show and to act and to give more trust. I think trust is the most important thing. If we trust each other, there's trust, there will be more investment in Greece, even from German companies in Greece, of course. But we need trust, we need the right surrounding.
But I'll tell you, you know, one thing that you keep hearing from politicians, from the previous government also, is that, you know, I mean, there's a need for not only the stick, but also for the carrot. And one of the complaints of the previous governments was that they were doing what they were supposed to do in terms of fiscal adjustment and all this. But the goalpost was, you know, they kept moving the goalpost in terms of the carrot, which was a debt relief. It was promised, you know, early on about a year ago, then it was moved on after the European elections and so on. Do you see the room for a very clear incentive, a very clear, you know, new approach that will give, you know, more incentive, political incentive, you know, to this government or to any other Greek government to move on the reforms?
To be honest, I'm not a politician, unfortunately, yeah. And I don't know, but I think they are positive and they are willing to give credit. Yeah, of course it wouldn't be, but it's always it's a dialogue. Yeah? It's a process between two parties or 28 parties. So, but I think it's optimistic and they're willing to give credit, and yes, why not to this government also? Yeah. Okay. And I know that we can read in the newspaper. That's where I have the information from, that Ms. Merkel and Mr. Tsipras are talking more and more and are telephoning, so there seems to be good relations. So why not to give credit?
Okay. So, Mr. Gonzalez, what's the mood like in Spain? And how has the Greek situation affected your politics also? Because that's
no, I think all the, like Mr. Grillo said, I'm not a politician, I cannot tell nothing in their name, but it's true also, it's the same than Mr. Grillo. We talk frequently with the politicians. I think everybody wants to have Greece in Europe, Greece in the Euro, I think that's out of question. It's clear like that. But on the other side, it's needed to make reforms. This is very important, and it's not enough to go to the negotiation with a paper, with a list of reforms we will do. I think it's needed to go with a plan, like in any company. In my company, I always, when somebody tell me I have a plan, I say, okay, can you answer 5 questions? What you go to do? How you do that? You will do that? Who will do that? When? And how much is the cost? Without that, who shows a real plan to make reforms, is difficult to advance, because it's a question of credibility. But I'm sure if Greece goes with this program of the structural reforms, believable, because it's developed with details, we will do that in this time, doing that in this way, etc. I'm optimistic about that, but it's needed to do these things. Where I want not to translate the example of Spain to Greece. I tell you, every country has different problems and reacts in a different way for the same similar situation. But for that works. That works.
So Beyrer, I may also ask you whether geopolitics is playing a role in the way the rest of Europe sees Greece now, because I think lately it has been more of an important factor than before.
Well, I mean, first on Greece, the economy and the packages. I mean, once again, I think business community is very firmly standing behind the Hellenic business community. Of course, talking to the institution depends to whom you're talking. I mean, Jean-Claude Juncker will tell you Greece has to stay, whatever happens, and I would agree. But of course, it's about getting the right deal. And you have been talking about carrots and sticks. I don't like the picture so much because it's always difficult and a little cynical also to talk about carrots and sticks when it's about human lives and so on. But the question is, I mean, where's the carrot now? Because 6 months ago there was quite some encouraging growth expectations, whereas now, I mean, it's around the bottom line or even below. And of course, I totally understand that growth expectations on paper do not help the people yet. And I think we had the same situation in Spain a year ago, when you have seen that growth expectations are getting better, but people didn't feel it. But now they start to feel it. I mean, they are going to create 1 million jobs in 2 years, and then people start to believe it. So it's, of course, always the most difficult moment to overcome. I would totally agree with the assessment of my friends from SEV, that it's about the structural reforms first, and the fiscal follows the structure. And might also be that that the margin of maneuver is a little bigger now because the Eurozone is less vulnerable now. But still, it's a question of trust. I mean, there needs to be a number of things on a piece of paper and the belief of the colleagues that it will be fulfilled. And I think there's a margin of maneuver. Geopolitics. Well, difficult to say. I think I'm not sure whether I would see this as a positive factor because well, Russia is a difficult ally to partner to handle at the time being, but I don't see Russia as any kind of alternative to Greece. Of course, can be a partner in energy policy, like it is for other European countries, but I think there's limits to this. And looking at the other points of geopolitics, I mean, I think you have seen after a wave of sympathy that even people like Barack Obama are now saying, well, look, guys, please deliver. And then I think European solidarity will work.
Let me ask you whether you see any plans, any appetite for investments in Greece right now. What kind of investments? And then let me ask you, if you had to choose, I mean, what would be the most important factor in your decision? Low wages, political stability, or a stable tax regime?
Political stability, of course, credible tax system, credible structures. And, you know, I think there would be probably a lot of German companies being prepared to invest in Greece. And you're right, of course, when you said it's only 10% or less than 10% participation, it's industry. But with a strong and healthy industry, this 10%, that would also help. So it's another situation. So there are a lot of companies, and Greece is interesting, has a lot of interesting resources, so it's good to make business, but they're waiting. They're waiting. There's not enough trust, and for me, trust in business, like in life, is the most important thing, to trust in the system. And if the politics proves that they not only have a plan, that they implement the plan. I think you made a very good proposal with your 82, I think it was 82 measurements in the together growth. Yeah? If we see an implementation of this program, all these points, and then after a time, trust comes back, and after trust comes back, then money comes. But that's the right sequence.
No, I agree with Mr. Grillo. I think it's not only a paper you need to read. The paper you need to read, but that's not enough. You need to start with these reforms, and then you must show you are able to implement reforms. Accepting the result of the reforms are not from today to tomorrow. Reforms need time, but it's easy to see after only some months if the reforms are really taking place and they're really producing effect. And I am sure in the moment that happens, if the implementation of the reforms works, this is the validation of the plan. And this is, let's say, the argument of the excuse to follow supporting because the things are going on. And then it's positive to push the country, and there will be the moment of the investment returns. It's very easy to tell something here for everybody's happy, the investment will come tomorrow, but frankly speaking, I don't believe it until there are not signs that the things are going in the right direction.
You want to add something? For me, it's not only a question of money to invest, it's of course a question of skilled people. You need the skilled people also in Greece, and I think you have skilled people in Greece, and I'm thinking about the IT business. You are active in the IT business, and Markus mentioned the trend digitalization. Yeah? That's something, that's the name of the game, that's the future history. So that would be, for me, in my view, it's a very good chance, especially in Greece, to increase the IT business with the people you have here, the skilled people, and that's important. So there are, besides the fact that you have only 10% industry share, yeah, and 90% consummation, I think there is potential. There is really potential to growth and to get some health back.
Well, I think Ulrich Grillo mentioned a very important aspect here, and I think we all have a big responsibility also from the European side to make sure that the digitalization of the European single market is helping to close the divides we're having and is not going to deepen it. And I think this is a very big strategic challenge. But on the question of investment, well, of course, first it's about security and trust. I mean, the deal needs to be made. There needs to be foreseeability. I mean, this is the basis for everything. Then I believe there can be enormous opportunities, and this is very important. Of course, there's a long list of things you could mention. I mean, one, of course, and this is also something I know from my personal history, to eliminate the state as an owner in major businesses, I mean, of course, is an important step, because, I mean, the state is never a very good entrepreneur for many reasons, because there's too much politics in it. Labor law, I mean, I do not mingle too much in the labor reform debate, but it's very clear, my conviction is too high minimum wages are normally producing unemployment. And of course there's many other points, but I mean, I think I read, we talked about this morning, I read an opinion piece of one of your colleagues in the Financial Times, and I think there's two major factors. I mean, the change of the system needs to be based on meritocracy and markets, and I think if you manage to do a step in this direction, the opportunities are large.
Now, one thing that's clearly missing in our country is a consensus, both political consensus and a consensus among the social parties, you know, in terms of what needs to change in this country. You have both done it in your countries. If you can tell us a bit, what were the secrets of the success? I mean, how did the country manage to get to that point? And especially what role the private sector played, and also what role the media played, because I think that's an important part of the equation. Mr. Gonzalez?
Well, I think the question, okay. I think it's very important to have consensus with the unions, in our case, with the social part, and it's better if we do this consensus without the government and without the politicians. I think we are adults, we can achieve this consensus, and we don't need anybody to help us for that, because normally when this it's better when we achieve a consensus with the unions, and then after together we go to discuss with the government. But if in the process of to find the consensus, government is also involved, it's always that complicates the things, because it's clear that unions, they move in the sense of the consensus for one reason, we move for other reasons, but the governments, they move for different reasons which are not on the table. That complicates everything. But it's not complicated. It's a question to respect the unions. The union must respect the association like us, like CEOE, etc., like their partners, and be honest. I think this is a very important thing. They must understand we are honest people. We find for different ways the same thing that they find, and at the end, if there are an agreement, the agreement is fulfilled. This makes build the credibility for the next negotiation. You can't do that from today to tomorrow. It needs time to go up with this consensus.
Well, I mean, two levels. I mean, of course, we have the social dialogue on European level, which is not the easiest one, because we have to combine very different systems. But this new Commission is more and more trying to build on it, meaning that all major policies, be it energy policy, digitalization, recently better regulation, is discussed with the social partners. And this is important because it builds up a certain level of mutual understanding, also on European level. In my home country, to bring an example from Austria, well, I mean, there is a tradition of social partnership and social dialogue, which is, of course, rooted in history. That after the war and after the whole destruction, people wanted to sit together and say, now we do totally differently. We have to do together. We have to base it on what I called our side of the game theory. Let's make a bigger cake, and then everybody has a bigger share. And it worked. But it works when you have an understanding what does your partner absolutely need at the end of the day. And if this is there mutually, and then on the basis of this understanding, you're looking for the best solution for both sides, I mean, it can work. But of course, it is important that you have strong players on both sides. I mean, we are together with our friends from SEV investing in this. There will be a seminar this week, also with the trade unions here in Athens, to build on this, because of course it needs strong players. And the government needs to listen. I mean, you need to have a natural exchange of views. And to be honest, in my home country, but I think also in Germany or Spain, or also on European level, it would be unthinkable that they propose an important piece of legislation or reforms or whatsoever without having discussed it with the social partners. And I think this is a part of normal policy making, which is of course a very important one.
Grillo?
My colleagues say the right things. You know, I think we need a great coalition. Not a great coalition in the government. We have it in Germany. It's not working. It's working. I mean, a great coalition within the society. So we need unions, we need employer associations, we need politics, we need everybody on one table, realize there is something to do, and let's work together and let's make an implementation plan. Let's your plan, let's make an implementation plan. Yeah? And that's important. And you know, when we, 15 years ago, Mr. Schröder, he was a social democratic, yeah? And he realized that there is a need to implement harmful steps. He did it, he lost his job, but he made the right things, and we are still, we are living from that, yeah? So social democratic, but he made a coalition with the unions and with the employers association, and that's important, yeah? Not to work against everybody, but to work together. That's like a knife. That's important. That's probably a strength in Germany and some other countries. Our partners, unions and employers associations work close together in good times and in bad times. These days we had wage increases of 4%, partly 5%. So it seemed to be good times, and they have higher increase. At that time they had increase for 1% or 0.5%, so the productivity grow. So that's to act together as partners.
Let me ask you a difficult question, but I wouldn't feel right as a journalist if I didn't ask you that.
The question is not difficult. The answer probably might be difficult.
Well, you know, there was a stereotype during the crisis that, you know, especially in the German press and elsewhere, that Greece is a very corrupt country, and it's, you know, I think justified to a large extent. But then when you look at the, you know, the corruption cases, about 50% of them have to do with German companies. And the question is, have you as a business community and the country as a government, have you addressed this problem the way the Americans did, for example, the Foreign Corruption Act and so on? Do you consider that a problem or not?
I think I'm very strong on that corruption is not a way to do business. And as president of the German Business Association, for me it's a very important topic. And the corporate governance codex, we have a lot of measurements in Germany to not avoid, but to get out of this topic. Yeah? So that's not a topic for Germans, and that should not be an instrument of doing business worldwide. I'm very sure on that, and we act on that. So it's not a typical German, it's not a typical Greece. It's in some countries in the world a little bit more, but I think like the Americans, like the Europeans, like the Germans, like the Greece people, we should fight against it. Let's have a fair play and fair business, and I think that's the name of the game.
Okay. Let's take a couple of questions, I guess, from the audience. Somebody wants to ask you a question. Yeah. We have a microphone somewhere. Well.
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for the presentations. I have a question for Mr. Grillo. You mentioned, sir, that in Germany, small and medium-sized companies are very important for the international competitiveness of Germany. And you mentioned that Greece also has a lot of small and medium-sized companies. In order to put things clear, could you please define what you mean by small and medium-sized companies in Germany? Thank you.
That's a good question. The number of companies might be 80, 98, 99%, but the average size of the small and medium-sized companies in Germany is bigger than it is in Greece, from my understanding. I think you have a lot of small companies, but probably with 10, 20 people. And in Germany, 98% family-owned small, medium-sized companies. The total sales account for around 67%, so around 30% for big multinational companies, and the rest small and medium-sized. I don't know if we don't have a clear number. Is it a turnover of 50 million or 500 million? Yeah, of course, family-owned companies which are much bigger. So, but the way of working, the way of acting, the entrepreneurial acting, that makes a small and medium-sized company, and that's an asset for national and international competitiveness. Though, and I think even in Greece, you have a lot of good entrepreneurs. It's not my role to say to good or bad numbers. But I think there's an entrepreneurial way of thinking in Greece is very good, so there should be a potential.
Very briefly, and again from Austria, sorry, but of course there is no European one-size-all answer. When I was running the Austrian industry, we of course looked very deeper into it. What is the success behind it? And the success is precisely what Ulrich Grillo said. I mean, it's about medium-sized companies, but I think one of the differences it's companies between 100, 200, 250 employees producing. And we found out that the backbone of our economy was medium-sized, producing, very specialized companies who were world market leader or top 3 or top 5 in very specialized niches, and most of the people in Austria would not know them. And this is of course one of the things. Of course, SME is not SME, and this was part of the story.
Do you supply those companies? Do they supply directly to the market, or to bigger companies who are doing it?
I mean, because of course in this size, I mean, a lot is going internationally, but a lot is going into German automotive. I mean, a lot is. I mean, when the success of German cars, there's a lot of also neighboring countries' success in it, and like our friend Markus tends to say, I mean, people see German cars, but very often it's European cars, because many parts are produced somewhere, and this is a success story.
But they need the big multinational in order to have success in their business.
Yes, I mean, this is the other side of the coin. This is what we call the leading competence units, to be kind of a pillar in the middle of it, and then we found out that very often you have a ratio of one of these leading competence units being responsible for 10,000 SMEs, and I found out that many other countries have a similar ratio. So it's about having the right balance.
No, I think the question of the size of company. There are a rule in the European Union related with the number of employees or the amount of sales, etc. I think the real rule must be which is the importance of the company in the niche of the market which is working. Because you can be a company with 50% or 50 employees and be a big company because it's the first one in the world in this niche of the market, because it's very small, this niche of the market. And I want to tell just a very example everybody can understand. If you are producing, you are a car producer, and you are producing 10,000 cars by year, and your cars are, as they call, general type cars, you are diet, because you are competing with Ford, with General Motors, with Volkswagen, etc., etc., diet. But if your name is Ferrari, you are a very big company. You produce cars like Ford, like Volkswagen, but the customers are not the same, and only with a few quantity of cars comparing with the others, you are the biggest company in your market niche. This is the idea. And I think for the countries like Greece, like Spain too, like Austria, which are not big countries, Spain is a little bit more, but the challenge is to produce something for a niche market, which you can be in the world the first, the second, the third, until the 5. Not below that. If not, it's very complicated. But I say not in the European Union, in the world, because competition now is global.
Absolutely.
I think we have managed to run out of time. It's 11:30, right? Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming to Athens at such a critical time for us. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to moderate this, and thank you all of you for participating in this. Thank you. Very nice of you.